So in the previous session, we have completed the pencil line drawing, and then we have traced our pencil lines by using three different mediums. So I'm telling you all the mediums. One was the permanent marker, fine tip permanent marker from Camlin brand. The another was black ball pen, and the third was a fine liner brush and black acrylic color, right? So in order to improvise our pencil line drawing and to fix the pencil lines, we have used the permanent medium. Okay, so once the pencil line drawing is completed and tracing is completed, we are supposed to erase all the grid lines, or maybe the lines which are drawn for supporting your subject. For example, there is a vertical grid line, there are multiple horizontal lines, right, which are not needed anymore. So use your eraser and erase all the pencil lines which are not required before applying the base coat. Okay. So now let us come to the base coat. I'm planning to apply this base coat on a different canvas. This one. This is more of an A3 size canvas. It's a ready and printed canvas on which I'm going to apply the base coat. So first of all, why do we apply the base coat? Let us discuss about that. That the base coat is required for supporting your other layers. There are going to be multiple layers of acrylic color. So the base layer will help you and it will neutralize the texture of the surface. थोड़ा सा आपका canvas को smooth कर देगा वो, right? And sometimes we tend to miss out some portions while coloring. Okay, for example, there are minute, small areas when we are painting, no, we sometimes tends to miss those areas. गलती से हम भूल जाते हैं वो area, या फिर थोड़ा सा coloring में error रह जाता है, right? So in those cases, the base color will help you out, and it will not look, your focus will be not at that point, right? So the base coat will help you from the back, right? That is one of the reason that we apply the base coat. How to finalize the base coat? Depending on the final color combination, we usually finalize the base coat. If your painting is having a lot of blue colors, like one of the painting I have done in my previous workshops, there is a Radha Krishna painting, and there is a lot of blue color. Okay, so instead of applying burnt sienna as a base color, we will apply blue color as a base coat, right? So according to the final color combination, according to more colors which are having in your painting, we decide the base color, right? So in our painting, there are multiple color combinations which you are supposed to select. One color combination is black color combination, black in the background, and the subject will remain as it is, colorful. And another is having a light background, which can be either light green or light blue, or it can be maybe a light gray tone. So for that, I have prepared two different techniques, right, for applying the base color. One can be, you may apply the base color in the whole canvas, and that can be burnt sienna color. Okay, because burnt is a lighter tone. So on top of it, you may either apply a light color or you may apply a dark color. So this is an ideal color for the base coat. This is burnt sienna color. Okay, so I'm going to make your life easy by selecting a burnt sienna as a base color. We're not going to mix green in the background. We are not going to apply green in the background. We're only going to apply burnt sienna as a base color. Although I will prepare another video, which will be in a continuation with this video, wherein I'm going to show you how to apply, another color that can be green or any lighter color in the background, and subject will remain with burnt sienna. So let us start. How do we apply the base coat? You need a big plate in which you can pour the pigment. I'm going to use Fevicryl acrylic color. This is my burnt color. You can see this is the tone. There's a light dark brown color also, which is quite similar tone, so do not get confused. Take burnt only. Take the pigment in your plate. Okay. See, we want to see the black outlines, right? So in order to achieve that outcome, we must apply a lighter tone or a diluted form of acrylic color, right? It cannot be directly with the pigment. Otherwise, the black lines will be hidden. Okay. So we must apply a diluted base coat. So observe this carefully. First of all, we must form the pigment by adding water to it. We have taken the pigment, minimum, say 60 to 70% of water can be added. 60 to 70% of water. Be very, very careful while mixing it with water. Minimum 60 to 70%. It should be ink kind of consistency. Uniformly mix the pigment with water. You may use a bigger flat brush, say 2 inches or 3 inches flat brush. Depending on the size of the canvas, you must form the color. ऐसा नहीं हो कि आप coloring कर रहे हैं, base coat apply कर रहे हैं, and the color is used, and you have to make it again. Otherwise, there will be brush strokes on the surface. So in order to avoid the brush strokes, you may make the color in a huge amount. I'm going to add a little bit more. सी लाइटर द बेटर. आप जितना ज्यादा पानी ऐड करेंगे उतना अच्छा है. ज्यादा इन द सेंस की 70 or 80% water can be added, because lighter base coat can be easily converted into a darker coat by applying 2 layers, but darker base coat cannot be reversed into a lighter base coat. Okay, so be very careful. Start with a lighter layer and slowly add layers depending on the requirement. Like this. This seems like a good pigment to me. You can see that it is flowing very well. It's not too liquidy. At the same time, it's not too concentrated. It's more like ink kind of consistency. Okay. Placing it over here so that you can see this together. Now you may use a big brush, bigger the better. You may use 2 to 3 inches flat brush, or you may use 1.5 flat. This is 1.5, and this is nearly 2.5 inches flat brush. Instead of a flat brush, you may use a sponge piece, because sponge is having that kind of a characteristics to absorb a good amount of pigment and water, so it will hold the pigment for a longer period, right? And the brush works as the same. So flat brush. I'm going to use a bigger brush because I want to cover the whole space quicker. Take the pigment properly. You may dip your brush once in water if you want, so that the pigment will be spreaded very well in the brush, like this. Remove the extra color at the rim of your plate. Put down your plate. And start from one direction. It can be either vertical or horizontal, like this. Okay. Move your brush in a way that it is either vertical or horizontal direction. Spread the pigment very well. Take the pigment again in your brush, remove the extra color, and again start from the same point where you left. Try to avoid these brush strokes by applying a uniform layer like this. If the brush strokes are still there, don't worry, because we're going to apply multiple layers of acrylic color on top of this. This is just a base layer. You may go for a horizontal direction near the outline, like this. Make sure that this whole process should be done in one single go. You cannot take a pause in the middle for 10-15 minutes, otherwise the color will dry and you will be able to see the strokes differently, right? So make sure that the whole thing is done in one single go, like this. Spread it very nicely. See, I'm not applying a lot of pressure on the brush. I'm hardly touching the brush with the canvas, like this. मैं ज़्यादा उसको दबाने की कोशिश नहीं कर रहा हूँ brush को. It's hardly touching the canvas, and I'm moving my brush. In order to get a smooth surface or a uniformed layer, you do not apply a lot of pressure. It's hardly touching. See how am I holding the brush? Hardly touching the surface, and I'm moving my brush like this. This is the base coat. Now this is applicable for all of you. It's okay if you're planning to add a lighter color in the background, or you are planning to go for black color or darker color in the background. Okay, you may go for this process for now. Are there any questions about the base coat? Please go ahead.
Excuse me, sir.
Yeah.
So actually, I'm using camel colors, and my burnt sienna looks a little towards the
That
brownish.
works.
That is all.
That's totally fine. Yeah, that's totally fine. You may go for any similar shade of this color. It's totally fine if it is slightly different than mine. Okay. Any other
Sir?
questions?
Yeah. If we use a sponge, then first we rinse it with water or directly with the color?
Yeah, that would be a better option. Just first dip it in water, remove the excess of water, and then take the pigment. Okay.
Thank you.
Any other questions, anyone? Once after it dries, it will look somewhat like this. Make sure that you are allowing it to dry in a normal environment. Do not make it, you do not keep it under the sun. जरूरी नहीं है कि आप sunlight के नीचे रखें. You can keep it under the fan, and within say 25 to 30 minutes it will dry. Okay, and then we are ready to start painting. Okay, so this is how
So,
you're supposed to add the base color. Yes. Are there
sir,
any
those
other
who are use
questions?
yes, sir, those who are you going to use green color, which shade of green should they use?
See, first of all, your task is to apply the base color, that is with the burnt sienna, and then later the
Okay.
second layer will be added according to your wish, according to your color of the background.
Okay.
In the green that I have used in my previous paintings, that is dark green color, a mixture of dark green, white, and burnt sienna. It's there in the recorded videos.
Sir, you mean to say we have to use brown color burnt sienna first?
Yeah, first, yes, that's right. For
Okay, thank
any
you.
color combination, this process remains the same. I'm making your life easy. This becomes a little more, convenient for all of you, because otherwise it'll be difficult to select the color and then apply the base coat. So go
Okay,
for
thank
burnt sienna. All of you go for burnt sienna as a base coat, and then later we will take a call which color we want to add in the background. Okay?
Sir,
Yes.
yeah, yellow color will cover, or we can put after Banshiana.
Yellow as in?
Suppose we want to use yellow on a background, so we can use after
Yeah,
Banshiana.
yeah. You can. Any light or dark color can be added on top of burnt, but make sure that you're not making the pigment too thick. If the pigment is too concentrated, if you're applying a darker layer, then it might be difficult for you to apply a lighter layer. That's why I showed you the process wherein I'm adding 70 to 80% of water, so that the base color is easy to overlap with the lighter pigment, right? Lighter color.
And
Okay.
sir, what do you suggest? Should we use Fevicryl colors only for base coat, or can
Fevicryl.
we use? Okay.
Yes, only Fevicryl color is advisable to use for, for the whole, I would say, painting, not only for the base color, right?
Okay, thank you, sir.
Now,
Sir,
huh,
excuse me 1 second. What if we have already done green?
yeah, it's fine. Fine, that's fine.
Fine,
That's
yeah,
totally fine.
because now you said it's better
No,
burn
no,
sienna. Okay.
not at all. See, I'm making it easier for you. That's
Okay.
why we are selecting burnt. But it's okay if you have added green color in the background. That's totally fine. After this particular session, I'm going to add one more video along with this video, wherein I'm going to show the green color along with the cow. Right. So you will understand the process a little better. Although burnt sienna as a base is totally fine. Now observe this carefully. See, why am I showing this? Because I want to show that how the brush can be useful to get fine lines. Right, some of you were struggling in the last session how to get fine lines using a fine liner brush. So this is a natural squirrel hair fine liner brush. Observe the fine, the quality of the lines you get in this brush. So mostly this is going to be my next workshop for pitchway painting. We're going to do it on an A3 size sheet, right? Anyways, now we must start practicing the blending techniques. All of you take out your drawing book. All of you please take out your drawing book.
Sir, just one question before.
Yeah.
The coating that you've given, you've done it on the extra space also, right? Where you're going to frame that extra space?
Yeah. The whole canvas. You must apply it in the whole canvas, no
Okay.
matter, if you're leaving the space, if you're going to frame it in future, just color it in the whole canvas, right? For example, if this is my space for framing or maybe for stretching it, I'm going to color this also. Okay.
Okay, thank you.
One question. I have bought Fevicryl. I have bought Brustro acrylic colors in place of Fevicryl. So, how much water should I add to it so that the consistency is like Fevicryl only?
It depends on how much pigment you have taken, right? So make sure that it is ink kind of consistency.
Okay, thank you.
Right. So now hold your questions. Now we must practice the blending techniques in today's session, and we will have the question answer session after the class. Okay. There are basically three major blending techniques. I'm going to name all the blending techniques. One is going to be wet brush technique. Second is dry brush technique, and the third is wet on dry technique. Right. So we're going to consider one technique at a time, and we're going to practice that. Right. If time permits, we will also practice our elements which are there in our painting, right? So flower bud, maybe a simple shape, and maybe a full flower. And if time permits, we will also practice the leaf of lotus. If we're not able to do it in the live class, you take it as a homework and complete each and every element with one particular technique. Okay, for wet brush technique, practice all the three. For dry brush technique, practice all the three, and then do the same for the last technique. Okay, so let us start. Initially, this is a demo, so you may observe. We want to, yeah. So we are going to practice the blending techniques with these two colors. One is crimson red, or it can be scarlet red, or second is white, and second is white. Okay. You need a palette. You need the brushes. So let me discuss about the brushes. What all brushes are required for these three techniques? So first of all, you need a few round brushes. Say number 6, number 7 round brushes will work. So I'm having 2 round brushes with me. If you're using Camlin round brush, then this will be number 6 and number 8. Okay, right now I'm using a different brand, so this is number 1 and number 2. Okay, so 2 round brushes will be needed. A few flat brushes, say 2 flat brushes would be more than enough according to the size of the circle. Say number 2 or number 4 would be more than enough. 2 flat brushes. You need a deerfoot stippling brush. Now, if you do not have a deerfoot stippler, you may use your number 1 or number 2 flat brush and dab it multiple times to get this kind of a fray bristle, right? And these bristles will help you in the dry brush effect. Okay, you may observe that this is my filbert brush, which I have converted into a deerfoot stippler. You may observe that the bristles are quite fray, and it will help me getting the dry brush effect. Okay, so 1 or 2 deerfoot stippler according to the size of your circle. And the last brush which is required the most is your fine liner brushes. If you're using the natural squirrel hair fine liner brushes, then it will look somewhat like this. If you're having artificial brushes with different bristles, then it will look somewhat like this. This is Brewstro brand fine liner brush. Okay, now we must start. First of all, we are going to understand the colors that we are going to use. So first we will take red color, which is the extreme dark color in our palette right now, red color. Second is white color, which is the most highlighted color in our palette. Second is white color.
The red, we should take Crimson Lake or Scarlet Lake.
Anyone would do. I'm adding white. Color blending is more important rather than selecting the tone. So in today's class, we're going to focus on how to do the color blending. The color may select it on your own. You may change the tone, or any other color can be used. Instead of red, you may take blue, right? Why we are taking red? Because in the flowers, it's more of red and white combination, right? Okay, so the first step is to mix the color and form multiple tones. Okay, first step is to mix the color, form the tones. Yeah. So first of all, I'm going to form the mid-tone. So this process remains the same. Please understand the process, no matter which color you're taking, but the process remains the same. So I'm going to mix red and white to form the mid-tone. I'm taking 50% of red and 50% of white to form the middle tone. Make sure that the middle tone is lighter than red and darker than white. Okay, it should be an appropriate middle tone. You have to mix it until you get a proper middle tone. If the pigment is too thick, you may dip your brush once in water and pour a little water to the pigment, mix it very well to form a good consistency. This seems like a good middle tone to me. Okay. Now we're going to go for the next tone, that is lighter middle tone. So take white, more of white and less of red. More of white and less of red. Mix it well. Make sure that your middle tone and lighter middle tone both are visibly different in tones, right? You must be able to differentiate these two tones. More of white and less of red. So right now there are 4 different tones in my palette. One is white, second is lighter middle tone, one is mid tone, and one is red. Now the last tone which we are supposed to form is darker middle tone, wherein more of red will be added and less of white will be there. More of red and less of white. So this tone is supposed to be darker than the mid tone and lighter than red. Basically, we're going to deal with 5 tones right now. Although if you wish to add more, you may go for 7 or 9 tones. That is totally your choice. I'm adding white so that you can differentiate all the colors. Okay, so right now you're able to see 5 different tones in my palette. I'm repeating myself again. What is the process of forming these 5 tones? First of all, we have taken red color. It can be crimson red, scarlet red, or any other tone of red, right? So one color is red. That is your darkest color in your palette. The second is white. That is the lightest color in your palette, right? And overall. So white is the second color. Now the third color which we have formed, the third tone which we have formed is by mixing red and white, and we have formed a middle tone. Okay, we can go for 50% of both the colors, or it may depend on your wish. Go for a mid tone. Then the lighter middle tone will have more of white and less of red. Okay, more of white and less of red, you will form a lighter middle tone. Okay, and for darker middle tone, you must add more of red and less of white. Okay, more of red and less of white. Make sure that there is a visible difference in between these 3 tones that you have formed. If you feel that your mid tone and your darker middle tone is looking very similar, then you must make some changes. Either you make this one lighter or you make this one darker. Same applies for these 2 tones. If you feel that your mid tone and your lighter middle tone both are looking similar, then you must either make this one darker or this one lighter. Try to make the tones visibly different. Okay, so this is the process. So I feel that these 2 tones are looking quite similar, so I'm going to add a little bit of white to it and make this one a little lighter so that my mid tone is a bit lighter. Yeah, this seems like a good mid tone. Make sure that your pigment is honey kind of consistency, honey or oil kind of consistency, right? So you may dip your brush once in water and take a drop of water and mix it, right? धीरे धीरे जैसे आप coloring करेंगे, you will come to know about the consistency, which is a good consistency and which is very dry consistency. You can see red color is not moving at all. That means it is very thick pigment. It's not moving at all if I move my palette. Okay, so that means red is quite thick. So I'm going to make red a little diluted by adding a drop of water. Honey or oil kind of consistency should be there in your palette. If the color is drying very quickly, you may keep a bottle which is having the spray, and you can fill it with water and you can keep spraying it on your color. After say 5-10 minutes, 15 minutes, you may apply that water spray on top of it. Okay. So once the color mixing is done, the color is multiple tones are formed, we are supposed to start blending. Okay, now no matter which color combination you're taking, for example, if you are planning to color the leaves, the lotus leaves, can anyone tell me which 2 colors can be taken here?
Green,
Green is one color. Okay.
sap green,
White.
Sap green. Okay.
White.
yellow,
And-
sap green and yellow.
Very good. So that can be one option, any one color. So sap green and white can be taken as one color combination. Somebody said white. So yeah, sap green and white can be taken as a one color combination. And the third can be yellow and sap green. Okay, or maybe yellow or dark green. Right. So any 2 colors can be selected according to your element. Right. So let us start. Now the first technique is wet brush technique. Okay, so in this particular technique, we are supposed to apply the color by using a round brush. You may select the round brush according to the size of your shape. Yes. I'm taking the middle tone. Please remember this process because this process remains the same for all the areas in your coloring, right? So I'm taking the middle tone and I'm applying the middle tone with my round brush in the shape. Right now we're practicing it in the circle. But imagine that we are coloring the flowers, right? So you must apply the base color, that is your mid tone, in that particular shape. Right now, the consistency of the color is more like honey kind of consistency or oil kind of consistency. Spread the color very well so that it is creating a uniform layer. You need to move your brush multiple times. You can check it out with the light, that if the area is shiny all over the space, that means it is a uniform layer. If it is shiny in some areas and if it is matte in some areas, that means the matte areas are dried and the shiny areas are still wet. Once the color is applied, the mid tone is applied, you have to wait for, say, 1 minute or say half a minute, and allow it to go in the semi dry stage. Okay, when it is too wet, it is very difficult for us to blend, but when it is in a semi dry stage, it is easier for us to blend. Right, you may switch to another brush. It can be a deerfoot stippler or it can be more of a flat brush. You may use a round brush also for blending, but remember that in wet brush technique, the blending should happen immediately after applying the color. Okay, so I'm using lighter middle tone now and I'll start from the middle. Round brush में आपको blending इतना effective नहीं मिलता है. Hence we usually prefer a flat brush or a deerfoot stippler and we try to blend. You must blend it in a way that your lighter tone and darker tone is gradually decreasing or increasing. Okay, you start with one tone. So right now I have started with lighter middle tone. The mid tone is added in at the base, at the back, like this. Now, if the blending is not happening because the base is dried, okay, the base color is dried and I'm not able to blend, I'm forming multiple circles here. The blending is not very good. Can anyone tell me what can be the process here? How do we blend these two circles? One is a bigger circle, one is the smaller circle with the lighter tone. How
Just
can you?
a wet
Yeah.
brush with water.
Sorry.
With
So
the wet brush, we can blend it.
So for first option can be you dip your brush once in water, remove the excess of water, and then try to blend it in this area. What can be the second option?
We can use the same color. I mean, a
White
darker
color?
color, any color.
Very good. So you take the mid tone again. See, because here in your brush there is a lighter tone, right? We have started taking the lighter tone and we have started blending in the middle like this. Okay. So brush में आपके already light color है. You're getting my point? So technically your brush is having a lighter color. Now, if you take the mid tone again, automatically you will form a mid tone between these two tones, right? Remove the excess of color and start working here at this line. So it will form a mid tone between the two colors which you've added and slowly start blending like this. Okay, it will give you a better blending effect. Make sure that the blending is according to the shape. So your brush should move according to the shape of your flower, or maybe if it is a circle, then your brush should move according to this circumference. Right now, I'm only able to see very minimalistic blending effect because we have, moved our brush mostly in the whole circle. Now we're going to take another color, which is a darker middle tone in our brush. We take darker middle tone in our brush and we try to blend around the circle like this. And the same thing will happen here because the base is dried, because we're working on paper, right? So paper will tend to absorb water and it will make your process a little quicker. It will dry quickly. But when you're working on the canvas, you will get more time for blending. So once the color is applied, you may try and blend, but I'm sure that the blending will not happen because the base is dried now. Okay, so try as much as possible, try to blend it as much as possible, and later, can anyone tell me how do we get a beautiful blending effect here? What can be the process?
We should take the next color. I mean, lighter than the.
Lighter than this will be
Lighter
than
first we wash the brush.
the
and
mid
white-
tone. Yeah, mid tone. So we take the mid tone again in our brush because here we have added the mid tone and the darker middle tone is not blending with it, right? So we will apply the mid tone here and we will try to blend those areas where it's not very effectively blended like this. So this is how you can achieve a very beautiful blending in your shape, right? You need to move your brush multiple times to get a good blending effect. Like this.
So,
See, more tones will look better and less tone will look very plain and two-dimensional, right? So if we are planning to add more tones, you may take white as one color and red as one another color, and you may apply it here in the center. Yes, your question?
Sir, can we add water to blend in the colors?
That will come in the third technique, which is wet on dry technique. Okay, so right now we were considering only the pigment, which is more like oil or honey kind of consistency, and we want to achieve the good blending effect. But in future, in the next technique, we will use water as a blending medium. Okay.
Okay, sir.
Now, if you can see that the circle is not very well blended, so I'm going to take mid-tone again, and I'm going to move it around this line so that I can get a good blending effect. Make sure that you're not applying a lot of pressure, otherwise the base layer will start to, peel off. So go slow. बहुत ही कम pressure आपको apply करना है. This looks good as of now. This looks a good, blending from lighter to darker tone. Now the next step is to achieve the outline, to color the outline. Now outlining can be done either with the darkest tone in your palette, that is red, or it can be done with black. Okay, the outlining can be done either with the darkest color in your palette, because we are taking darker color around the circle here. If it is vice versa, if it is opposite, we have taken lighter color around the circle here and darker color in the center, then you must, select accordingly. Then white will be used for outlining. Okay, so I'm using red as my color for outlining. You may use a round brush, fine liner brush for outlining. Like this. That is the last step to complete your shape. Okay, later, if you wish to still increase the number of tones in your shape, you may use either kit pass crayons or other blending tools and mediums for creating more tones. One can be kit pass crayons, one can be glass marking pencils. We usually use glass marking pencils for the paper. It looks somewhat like this. This is a glass marking pencil. This works very well on paper and on top of acrylic color. Okay, so मान लीजिए कि I'm using white color and I'm trying to add a few strokes in the center. So it will create the number of tones, increase the number of tones in your circle. In the same manner, there is red glass marking pencil available in the market. So red can be used as the darkest color. Okay, so that can be one option. Another option can be kit pass crayons. Right, now, are there any questions about this technique, wet brush technique? Otherwise, we'll switch to the next technique called dry brush technique. Are there any doubts?
Hi, Kiran. Savita
Yes.
here. At the
Yes.
final stages of the flower, should we again color it with the marker at the edges, or this will be the final one?
After applying the base coat,
Yeah, no, after the flower is completely done with all these shadings, should we give a marker line, or this will be the final one?
yeah, we will come to that. It's not required as of now because we haven't started coloring the flowers yet. That will be taken as a next session. We'll take it in the next session. Although, yes, you must outline it with the marker or with the fine liner brush, but that is not a part of today's session. We'll cover it in the next session. Okay.
Yeah.
Are you planning to complete it before the workshop?
Yeah. My entire painting will be done by 30th of April.
Okay. Yeah, then you must watch the next video. We have discussed about, how to color the flowers, how to add the outlining in the next video, next live video. Okay.
Yeah.
It's very well explained. So you will love to see that video.
Sure. Thank you.
Yeah. So in the dry brush technique, you can see that while I was talking to you, I was coloring the base. Why? Because in the dry brush technique, the base should be fully dried. And even in the wet on dry technique, the base should be fully dried. Okay. So I'm using the mid-tone and I'm applying it in the circle, which is my shape right now. The process will remain the same for all the techniques. You must apply the mid-tone for the base, right? Your middle tone should be applied for the base. You must allow it to dry in these two techniques. And in this particular technique, you have to blend immediately after applying the mid-tone. Okay, so there is only that one difference. Otherwise, it's mostly same. So we will have to wait for this to dry and then we will start blending. For the dry brush technique, you must use a deerfoot stippling brush. That is a must use brush for dry brush technique. According to the size of the shape, you may select the brush, the size of the brush. The deerfoot stippler will look, original deerfoot stippler will look somewhat like this. You may see that it is a full circular brush like this. There is an angular tip like this, and you can see that the bristles are quite, separated and quite fray. It gives you a good blending effect when the pigment is dry. It is a very similar brush which you might be using for, adding makeup to your face, and you must be using it for adding the compact or somewhat like that, right? It is a very similar brush, and even the process is going to be very similar. When we are adding the next tone, we will try to move our brush in a way that this is somebody's face, and we are adding the powder. You have to imagine that process. Okay, fine, this seems like it is dried. You may check it by either touching it, or you may look at it through the light. If it is fully matte, that means it is wet, it is dried. If it is still shiny, that means it is wet. So we are going to use a deerfoot stippling brush when we are looking for dry brush effect. Make sure that your brush is fully dried. We are not taking any amount of water, and we are not making it wet. It's fully dry brush. Even the pigment should be fully dried. Okay, you must not add any amount of water to it. It should be directly poured from the bottle. If you feel that you have taken the pigment from a longer period of time and it is drying, it is very thick, kind of a medium, more like a paste, then you must add a drop of water. The consistency should be, again, honey or oil kind of consistency. Okay, not too diluted. It should be concentrated pigment. Yeah, this seems like a good pigment to me. It's flowing and is honey and oil kind of consistency. So now the mid tone is added at the base. Now we must start adding the lighter middle tone. So I'm going to take lighter middle tone in my brush. Now observe this very carefully. Once you've taken the color in your brush, it's too much. Okay, you won't be able to handle this much of pigment on your surface if you are planning to take dry brush stroke. Okay, so you must remove the excess of pigment in a piece of cloth or in a piece of paper. 70 to 80% of your pigment should be removed. Remove it in a piece of cloth by touching it with the brush, and with very little pressure, start with very little pressure, and from the center you may start with the lighter tone like this. Move your brush according to the shape. If you're getting wet strokes, that means your pigment is, the consistency of your pigment is little wet. You have to make it a little more concentrated. Okay, so yeah, this seems like, yeah, okay, this looks very, it looks concentrated. So you may add a little bit of pigment to it. Looks a little diluted, so आप थोड़ा सा उसमें pigment add कर दीजिए. Remove the excess of color. Once you have taken the color in your brush, remove the excess of color and follow the same process. Apply very little pressure, move your brush along with the shape, and try to blend. This is another technique called dry brush technique. Same routines applies here. If you're not able to blend the color, you must take the mid tone again in your brush and follow the same process. I'm taking the mid tone again in my brush because I'm not able to blend it properly. Take the mid tone again, remove the excess of pigment, and then blend it. Here we are looking for these dry brush strokes. Okay, do not try to overlap these strokes. You will get some sort of a texture on the surface which we are looking for. That is the beauty of dry brush technique. You will get some kind of a dry strokes. Okay, so keep it. Do not try to hide it in a manner that the texture is not visible at all. Remove the excess of pigment. I've taken the darker middle tone now, and I'm blending it from the circumference like this. You can see that the blending is not happening very effectively. That means we need to take the mid-tone again in our palette, in our brush, and then we must blend it again. Make sure that the blending is effective. There must not be any difference in the tones, like it is very, clear. It should be effectively, the transition should be very effective from dark to light tone. So I'm taking mid-tone again. As you can see that here the blending is not good. So I'm taking the mid-tone and trying to overlap this area. Like this. This is the dry brush technique, and this technique is very, very effective on canvas. Can you tell me the reason why? Why it's effective on canvas, not on paper?
It's cloth, it absorbs very quickly. So we can.
No, because the canvas which we are using is a primed canvas, right? So it will not
Okay.
absorb the pigment. I'm
Okay.
talking about the dry brush technique. Why it is effective on canvas, not on paper?
Canvas texture.
Yeah, because of the texture. So definitely your brush is Deerfoot stippler. That's very correct. But due to the texture, you will get more effective dry brush strokes. Okay, and it's very effective on canvas. So one of I would say I would suggest to use the dry brush technique for canvas if you're planning to do some paintings in future. And the last step is to outline your shape. Okay, so use the red color as the darkest color in your palette. You may use black color for outlining and fine liner brush, and you may outline like this. Outlining will define your shape, so make sure that it is nicely done. If you're planning to eliminate the outlines, can anyone tell me what can be the process? If I want to eliminate this outline, I don't want to keep it in my shape. I want to make it in a way that the outline is also a part of a blending tone. How do I do that?
Darkest tone.
Yes, you may switch to another brush. Take the darkest tone, that is red in your palette, right? Take the red color. And as we are using dry brush technique, as we're dealing with dry brush technique, remove the excess of pigment. Use a fine brush. This time it's more of a round brush, but the bristles are quite frayed. So I'm using this brush. You may dip it once in water. थोड़ा सा आप पानी ले सकते हैं and try to blend the outline with the mid-tone, with the base, like this. Now unknowingly we have switched to wet on dry technique because we have taken water. So this is wet on dry technique because we have taken water. You can take the mid-tone if it is not blending. You can take the mid-tone and again try to. So this is a never-ending process. Unless you get a very good blending effect, you have to keep doing this unless you get a very beautiful blending effect. Are there any questions about dry brush technique? Please let me know. This is the second technique which we've learned, dry brush technique, wherein the pigment is dry and even the brush is dry. We are supposed to use the Deerfoot stippler brush. We must take the dry pigment, remove the excess of pigment in a piece of cloth, and then we must blend. Okay, according to the tone, wherever you want. I mean, if you're planning to add lighter tone in the center, you must take lighter middle tone and start blending in the center, and then take darker middle tone and then start blending around the circumference. In the same manner, if you're coloring in the petal, then the upper portion is darker and the lower portion is lighter, right? So first you apply the mid-tone in the whole petal and then start from the darker tone from the upper part, from the tip, and lighter tone from the lower section. The strokes will be according to the shape like this, from bottom to up like this. You cannot take opposite or may say perpendicular strokes like this. That won't be a good choice. So go along with the shape. Now, the last technique which we are going to practice in our canvas, that is the most important technique, which is called wet on dry technique. Okay, for this particular technique, we will use two brushes, one for applying the color and one for blending the color. One brush will be used for applying the color, which is going to be more of a round brush, and one brush which we are going to use for blending, that is a Deerfoot stippling brush. Okay, so these two brushes will be needed, one for applying the color, which is a round brush, and one for blending the color, which is your Deerfoot stippler. So let us start. As the base is already dried, you can see that if I apply the color, it can be a little diluted color. Okay, you can have a little bit of water because the base is already dried, so it will not affect the base. So take a little bit of diluted color and add it in the area where you want the highlight. I'm sure that it is not going to blend it with the base because we're dealing with the wet color and the base is already dried. You need to switch to the next brush, which is your Deerfoot stippler, and try to blend it. And I'm sure that it will not blend if your brush is dry. You may dip it once in water, remove the excess of water from your brush, and then try to blend it. Immediately after applying the stroke, you must try and blend. If you wait for the first stroke to dry, then you won't be able to blend properly. So after applying the color, you must blend it immediately. If the blending is not effective, you may go for another layer. You may apply the color again and immediately switch to the next brush and blend it. Your brush should move according to the shape. Here, as we're working on the paper, the color will tend to dry quickly, but when we're dealing with the canvas, when we're working on the canvas, it will give you more time for blending. Okay, so once you have applied the layer, it will give you more time for blending and will be more effective. So I've applied a stroke of darker red, that is a darker middle tone, and I'm blending it with my deerfoot stippler. You need to move your brush along with the shape. If the blending is not very effective, dip your brush once in water, remove the excess of water, and then try to blend like this. So these are the 3 techniques which we're going to practice, and we're going to work with these 3 techniques. And majorly, these 3 techniques are used in all your paintings. Whenever you're painting any similar, I would say, subject when you're painting, no? So these techniques will be useful. Are there any questions about the 3rd technique, wet on dry technique? Please let me know. All clear? I'm repeating the 3rd technique again. We have taken the mid-tone and we have applied it in the center, in the circle. Once the circle is fully colored, we have allowed it to dry. सूखने के बाद we have taken a mid-tone, lighter middle tone, and we have applied it in the center. For application of the color, we must use a round brush, and for blending the color, we must use a deerfoot stippling brush. The consistency of the color will be more like a diluted color. It will not affect the base because the base is already dried. We must blend it on top of it like this. It's very similar to dry brush technique, but the pigment here is a little wet. That is why the name of this technique is wet on dry. Once everything is done, you may use your fine liner brush and do the outlining. Red is the darkest color in my palette, so I'm using red as for outlining. Make sure that the pigment is wet when you're outlining, otherwise you will get wavy line. You may rotate your sheet for getting the best outcome. So these are the 3 techniques which are the most, I would say, used technique in any painting. Okay. So now once these 3 techniques are practiced on a paper, I would suggest you to practice the same techniques on the shapes which we have used, right? So these are the 3 petals you may take, and then maybe 3 flowers, and then maybe 3 leaves of lotus. Okay. Do you want me to show any one flower? That'll be the last part of today's class.
Yes, sir. That would be helpful.
Okay, so I will show you any one flower which we are going to do in our class, right? The same technique will be used. So we're going to use the wet brush technique more in our wet on dry technique more in our class. So let us practice this one. Okay. Zoom it in a little bit. Yes. Handy.
So can you show one leaf as well?
Yeah, I can.
Yeah.
Yes, tell me.
Any one technique can be used and the result will be the same, right?
Of course not. Of course not. Why the result would be same? Because the techniques are different and the results are also going to be different. Okay. So in the dry brush technique, you can see that there are dry brush strokes. In the wet on dry technique, the results will be slightly different. And in the wet brush technique, we're blending along with the application of the color, right? So the final results will be different, no?
Okay, so but it is up to us that we have to use any one of the technique, right?
See, it depends that what kind of final outcome that you're looking for. If you're planning to go for dry brush effect in the whole canvas, then you must follow dry brush technique. If you're planning to go for smooth blending effect, then you must go for wet on dry or wet brush technique. It depends on the final outcome. Yeah. Sometimes even the canvas guides you that which technique you must use. For example, you have started using wet brush technique, okay, and the color is drying and you're not able to manage it, so you must switch it to wet on dry technique or dry brush technique. Sometimes your shape is such that where you want the dry brush effect. For example, if we consider the face of Srinath ji, then here on the cheek you need the dry effect, right? Both the cheeks are quite highlighted. So in that case, I think the dry brush technique will be more effective. So according to our requirement, we can select.
So in the flower,
Yeah.
as per you, which technique will we work more better?
We are going to use wet on dry technique more in the flowers, okay, and in the flowers we are going to use a very different format, or I would say we're going to use textures, visual textures we are going to use. Once we start coloring, no, you will understand. So we will discuss that in tomorrow's session, how the flowers are colored. I'm going to give you a small demo right now. Observe this. So first of all, as this is wet on dry technique, I am coloring the base with the mid-tone. Okay, this is your first step to follow. All of you, please mute yourselves. Somebody needs to mute. Yeah. So this is my mid-tone, which I am applying in the shape, no matter if the shape of the flower is different, if it is a full flower, if it is only one bud, or if it is having two buds, you have to first fill in that particular shape. Okay, if it is a full flower, you may avoid, or you may overlap, I would say, not avoid, but overlap the outlines. As we are dealing with the lighter color, I'm sure that the outlines will pop up again. Once after the color dries, the outlines will pop up on the surface. So you may color the whole flower with the round brush, and the tone is mid-tone. In the same manner, if you're planning to color the leaf, then you have to form the middle tone and you have to apply the middle tone in that particular leaf. You may practice a few leaves on a piece of paper, and in the same manner, you may practice a few flowers. Once the base color is applied, you have to allow it to dry. Usko सूखने देना है आपको, and then you must start blending. So as I mentioned, while we were practicing the third technique, wet on dry technique, one brush is required for applying the color and one brush is required for blending the color. So I'm using the first brush for applying the color. This is my lighter middle tone, and I'm going to apply it from the bottom. Just give 1 or 2 strokes. Use your another brush, that is your deer foot stippler, and drag your strokes to up like this. It seems like it is not very well blended. That means you need to take the mid-tone again in your brush and you need to cover this area. Take the mid-tone again in your brush and add a few strokes here in order to achieve a good blending effect like this. Okay. In the same manner, you can take darker middle tone and apply the color here in the upper section. Okay. Use your deer foot stippler and then drag your strokes down like this. If you wish to increase the number of tones, then you may take red as a color. You may take red as a color and color only the tip of your flower.
Sir,
Yes.
same deer foot stippler can be used for all the tones, right?
Yeah, same, but according to the size. Yeah. If you are using a
for
smaller,
one petal like you are coloring, the same brush you are using, right? We
yeah,
don't have
same
to.
brush.
Okay.
Same brush. I'm using the same brush for applying the color and same brush for blending the color.
Okay.
Okay. I'm not changing the brush at all. Now it's up to you how many tones you want to add. For example, right now I'm able to see 3 different tones. One is the lighter tone, one is mid tone, and one is darker tone. Okay, darker middle tone. Now, if you wish to still increase the number of tones, you may take white here and add here in the lower section, and you may take red as a color and add it from the top. Black color can be used for outlining, or red color can be used for outlining. Okay, so that is how you're supposed to color the petal. Now I'm going to show you another technique which we are going to use in the class. For that, you are not supposed to use any of the brush. We're going to use a fine liner brush. We're not using the deerfoot stippler or the round brush for applying the color. Observe this carefully. So for this, you must use a little diluted color. थोड़ा सा आप पानी रखेंगे साथ में. Use a little diluted color. I'm going to show you this process from a different angle so that you can see that how the brush strokes are working. This is the last part of today's session. Observe. Let me zoom it in. Okay, so right now this is the base color, that is my mid-tone. I'm going to use my my fine liner brush. I'm going to use my fine liner brush. First of all, I will start with a little darker tone than this. Okay, so if imagine that this is my lighter middle tone, so I will take mid-tone in my brush and I will give some strokes. Okay, so right now this is my mid-tone, so I must take darker middle tone in my brush. Okay, remove the excess of color and start adding some strokes from the top. Remember that these strokes are supposed to be added in a way that they're not overlapping each other. At the same time, the direction of the strokes are added in a way that it is falling exactly according to the shape of your petal. I hope this is visible. So once these strokes are added in all the petals, so usually I would suggest that you take one color at a time, one tone at a time, and do it in all the petals. If you are coloring the flowers, I would suggest that give the base color in all the flowers, then give the first layer of the strokes in all the flowers, and then go for the next tone, because this way it will be more quicker. This is a fine liner brush which I'm using. Remember that you're supposed to cover minimum 40 to 50% of the petal, 40 to 50% of the petal by using this color, that is darker middle tone. Okay, in the same manner, you can clean your brush then. Okay, clean your fine liner brush, take lighter middle tone, take lighter middle tone in your brush. Okay, again it should be a little diluted color so that you can get effective strokes, and very fine strokes are supposed to be added in the lower section of your petal like this. Again, the direction of the strokes are supposed to be given in a way that it connects the previously given strokes. आपको उस तरीके से स्ट्रोक्स देने हैं ताकि आपके पुराने जो स्ट्रोक्स है उनके साथ ये कनेक्ट हो, ऐसा दिखे. Like this. There should be a connection between the darker strokes and the lighter strokes like this.
Which
Okay.
color are you using?
I'm using a lighter middle tone. Lighter middle tone. So more of white and less of red. Like this. You may leave a little bit of space for outlining. Like this. Near the tip of your highlighted tone, you may please mute. All of you, please mute yourselves. Like this, you may give some strokes. Okay, it depends on what kind of, how much patience you have. आप कितना ज्यादा काम कर सकते हैं इस पे, उतना ज्यादा आपका final outcome अच्छा दिखेगा, right? Once after these two tones are added, you may take red as one color. You may take red as one color and only apply a few strokes at the tip of your petal. For example, here, now this time as you go for a darker color, the the stroke length will reduce. Okay. For example, right now, if I'm giving the strokes will be shorter than the previously given strokes. Okay. So if you have taken 1 centimeter strokes earlier, right now, I'm only taking half a centimeter. The stroke length will be reduced.
सर
Yes.
आप कर रहे हैं उसका इमेज रेफरेंस के लिए आप ग्रुप में भेज देंगे तो वी कैन.
बिल्कुल भेजना पड़ेगा, बिल्कुल भेज देंगे. क्यों नहीं भेजेंगे? Who was that? Can you please tell me your name?
नेहा, थैंक यू.
Neha. Neha, why I won't send you the image. Of course, I have to.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yes.
See this strokes. Observe the strokes. How fine you can give these strokes, and that is the beauty of your work, right? अब जितना ज़्यादा strokes को fine करेंगे, उतना आपका काम अच्छा दिखेगा. Okay, this is the beauty of pitch wave painting. Observe. So you can get multiple tones in one area, starting from the lighter tone, then middle tone in the middle, then darker middle tone, and then red. So there are so many tones in one petal. There is a lot to see in one petal. Most of the students struggle in this area where they struggle with the direction of the strokes. I will make this mistake so that you understand what you're not supposed to do. See, sometimes no, they give this kind of a stroke, these type of a stroke. That is not the angle at which you must give the stroke. The stroke will start from the tip and it will fall on the petal like this. As you go away from the tip, the stroke is going to be, you have to take your brush up like this. This is called visual texture. Okay, ये आपको काफी प्रैक्टिस करना पड़ सकता है अगर आप डायरेक्टली काम करना नहीं चाहते तो. Okay, the direction of the stroke will depend on the shape. For example, if you are coloring the leaves, then the direction of the strokes will be bottom to up like this. Like this. Here even the angle is changing. Okay, आपको काफी प्रैक्टिस करना पड़ेगा इसके लिए. The last part is outlining. So when you
I
Yeah.
cannot see the difference like I am doing with you. तो
हाँ.
जो फर्स्ट में ऊपर में जो अपने स्ट्रोक दे रहे हैं विद द डार्कर रेड टोन,
हाँ,
ओके,
हाँ,
एंड नीचे जो वाइटर लाइट टोन का जो हम लोग शेड दे रहे हैं,
जी.
फिर मैं जब ऊपर वाले स्ट्रोक्स पे जब ओवरलैप कर रही हूँ द डार्कर रेड वन, तो सर
Yeah.
इट्स नॉट शोइंग मी.
The difference is not visible, right?
Yeah, exactly.
That means your middle tone which you have taken or your darker middle tone which you have taken, no, that
Mhm.
is supposed to be a little more lighter. See, that is what I tried to explain in the beginning. For example, see, this is your darker tone, that is your red, right? Darkest tone in your palette, red.
Yeah.
And this is your darker middle tone. If
Hmm.
these two tones are similar, then you
Hmm.
won't be able to differentiate it in the flower.
Hmm.
So I would suggest that you make the darker middle tone a little lighter, so that the
Okay.
difference is there, right?
Okay.
Hmm.
Or else I can put a small amount of like black with red so that the
Yeah,
strokes.
that is also possible. That's also possible. That is a good thing to do. For example, in your palette, that is the most red is your most darkest color, right? But still,
Yeah.
if you're planning to add one more color, then add a drop of black or say brown, dark brown, and make a darker tone. So आपके पास 5 की जगह पे 6 tones हो जाएंगे. And that
Yeah,
will
so that
be an
the
addition.
overlapping will look good.
सर हमें
Yeah.
ये बुक में प्रैक्टिस करनी है आज या डायरेक्ट
Yeah.
कैनवास पे करना है?
No. You must practice it first on a paper and then on the canvas. Yeah.
Okay.
Now the last part of today's class is to do the leaf. That is the last part, and then we will end the session. It will take hardly 10 minutes. This time I'll go a little quick.
सर काऊ अपने करने वाले था.
काऊ आज नहीं करेंगे, कल नेक्स्ट टाइम करेंगे. ओके, अभी तो सिर्फ
Okay.
प्रैक्टिस करना है आपको.
सर
यस.
हमारी पेंटिंग के लिए ये जो कैनवस बनाया हमने, इसमें
जी.
कितना अमाउंट ऑफ ये पिंक के शेड्स, मतलब कितना अमाउंट कलर हमको प्रिपेयर करना है अराउंड?
जी, वो तो आप उसका मतलब कोई मेजरमेंट नहीं है that it should be I mean this amount, but I
लाइक
would
द
suggest
रेफरेंस
कि-
पिक्चर यू हैव, उसमें जो लोटस फ्लावर है वो लिमिटेड है और
Right.
जो भी है वो माला में है, तो उसके
जी.
लिए मतलब व्हाट व्हाई आई
जी,
वांट
आप
टू आस्क, बिकॉज वो सूख जाएगा इसलिए.
No, I understand, but don't worry, you make it in a huge amount. आप जितना भी कलर आपके पास है, आप दो सेक्शन है ना पैलेट के, 2 या 3 पैलेट जितना कलर आप बना लीजिए. If you consider this size of your palette, then maybe 3 sections would be, I think, more than enough for coloring the base. Okay, 3 sections.
ओके, थैंक
Usually for being on a safer side, we usually make more amount of color ताकि आपको वापस से वही टोन बनाने की दिक्कत ना हो. हालांकि हमें इस स्टेज पे वो प्रॉब्लम नहीं आती है because we have done it multiple times, so we can mix the color and make it again. And that again it can be a good I would say challenge to yourself to mix the color and form the same tone. अगर आप मान लीजिए कभी कलर खत्म हो जाता है तो आप वापस से बनाने की कोशिश कीजिए. because that will be a good challenge and it will help you for color mixing.
सर
हाँ जी
हमें एक टाइम पे एक ही फ्लावर पे कलर करना है क्या?
जी नाउ होल्ड योर क्वेश्चंस ऑल ऑफ यू प्लीज होल्ड योर डाउट्स ये सब चीजें हम बाद में क्लास के बाद डिस्कस करेंगे I
ओके
will give you more time, okay, for discussing this. Observe this, all of you. I'm zooming it in. Please observe how the outlining is going to make your whole shape more lively. Observe. यहाँ पे कुछ गलतियां होती हैं हमसे, right? So to hide those mistakes, you can do the outlining. And remember that this time when you're doing the outlining, it's the final look of your painting, right? So you're avoid making mistakes. Like this. When you look at it from distance, you will see that how the left side of the flower is looking more effective and the right side is still unfinished. Okay, so this way outlining is very, very important. I don't know why it's looking so dark. In real, it's quite light. Okay, so this is how you're supposed to complete one flower, and in the same manner, we're supposed to do the leaf. For the leaf, you may take the same process will remain the same. You can take sap green color in your palette. You may mix it with either white or yellow. You may mix it with white or yellow to form the middle tone. I'm using white color. First of all, form the mid-tone. That is the same process that you followed for red and white. Form the mid-tone. You may form darker middle tone and lighter middle tone. For I don't have much of the space in my palette, so I'm making it in two colors in one area, like this. Okay. So first of all, your first task is to mix these two colors, lighter middle tone, green and white to form the mid-tone, and apply the mid-tone in that area. Apply the color in that particular area. You may cover the whole space with this color by even overlapping the outlines. Keep a reference image in front of you. जब भी आप काम करते हैं एक reference image आपके सामने रखिए to understand which tone is added where. This is the mid tone that I've added in the whole shape. Okay. Once the middle tone is added, you may take lighter middle tone by mixing it with white. So lighter middle tone can be taken. And observe in the reference image, if you see that this particular area is having more of highlight, so you may add the lighter tone there. This is a lighter middle tone. You may take sap green individually and form a darker tone and add in the lower section like this. You may take the middle tone in between these two colors and try to blend it. Along with the shape, you need to move your brush. If the color is too much on the surface, you need to use a deerfoot stippler and try to blend it. आपको जब कलर आप ऐड करते हैं तब आपको सबसे एक इम्पॉर्टेंट चीज याद ये रखनी है दैट which tone is added where, right? Either the lighter tone or the darker tone, which tone is added where according to the light falling on the shape, the tones will be forming. अगर आप ध्यान से देखेंगे लीफ को तो अंदर की साइड का जो भाग है वो थोड़ा ज्यादा डार्क होगा बिकॉज द लाइट इज नॉट रीचिंग इन दैट एरिया. Okay, and the upper section will be comparatively highlighted like this. and then you try to blend these two tones in a way that it creates an effective blending in between according to the shape. You may switch to a deer foot stippler and you may blend it like this. Okay, later you may give the strokes according to the shape. As I mentioned earlier, you may give the strokes and then outlining. Okay, finally, if you wish to create an outline, let me just show you one last thing. See, as in this particular shape, this line, the upper line is the most highlighted line. Okay, so for that line, you can take only white color. Max to max, you can mix a little bit of sap green. This is the most highlighted color you can use, and just give one outline. Like this. This is the most highlighted area, and even this. Somewhere in the twig, maybe you can give one line. Okay, and then black can be used for outlining. You may use black color and do the outlining. That is the last step. Okay, I think it is pretty clear now. Are there any questions, anyone? This is my palette. We will hold the recording here. Are there any questions about the leaf?
Instead of white, you can use yellow color also, no?
Yeah, you may use yellow.
Yeah.
Yellow, and for creating this kind of a tone, you may use yellow and dark green also. Dark green and yellow can be used. Yes.
For the lotus seed pod, all the seeds should be painted black in color or dark green in color?
Dark green can be taken. Dark green can be taken. Yeah. See, the color combination can be selected according to the reference images. You may try researching about these elements like seed pods and these leaves, lotus leaves. Try to refer these images and then do a little practice on rough paper and then finalize whichever color combination you want. Okay. Okay, fine. So let me hold this recording here and then we'll have the question.